Today, athletes spend so much time on nutrition, health, and recovery. George Blanda played till the ripe age of 48 and 109 days old. What was his secret? Steak, smoking, and drinking. Importantly, he says his worst years of his career were when he didn't smoke at all. Take notes, folks. Players like Tom Brady are hailed for their longevity, but this man outlasted them all. Now yes, he didn't have the career that players like Tom Brady did, fair enough, but to play in one of the most physically demanding sports till 48 is a serious achievement. I'm convinced he would have come out with a walker if necessary. He once said there was a belief, when discussing some of the greats that he thought retired too early, that you're no longer capable of playing when you reach 30 or 35. Baloney. He saw 6 presidents come and go during his career, starting with Harry Truman and ending with Gerald Ford. When Blanda was forced to retire for good, he was the NFL's all-time leading scorer with 2,002 points. He is one of only 2 players to play in 4 decades, doing so from the 1940s to the 70s. He played primarily as a quarterback and kicker for the University of Kentucky and would be drafted by the Bears in the 12th round in 1949. Although his college coach told then Bears coach George Halas that he would never make it as a pro place kicker. Nice take, sir. The Bears were led by Hall of Famer Sid Luckman, so he would be the third-string quarterback. Initially, his brief appearances as quarterback didn't go too well. He threw 5 interceptions in 21 pass attempts. But he would get the starting role as quarterback in 1953, and he led the league in passing attempts and completions. He'd be injured the following season, and the Bears primarily began to use him as a kicker, although he played a little bit at linebacker in 1951. Disputes with George Halas over the years, plus not wanting to be typecasted as a kicker, prompted him to retire from the Bears. You could say he pulled a Brady, dipping his toe into retirement only to come back. The AFL came into existence a year later and he joined the Oilers. He'd go on to win AFL titles in 1961 and 1962, win MVP in 1961, and was a 4-time AFL All-Star. In his first year with the Oilers, he passed for 24 touchdowns and kicked 15 field goals. That included 7 touchdowns in one game against the Titans in 1961, a record held by only 7 other quarterbacks, although he was taken out in the third quarter, so he could have easily had more. In his second year, he posted an AFL-NFL record of 36 touchdowns and 16 field goals. The gunslinger also threw a lot of interceptions though, leading the league in interceptions 4 years straight. He didn't care though. He said, "I'd rather throw 300 interceptions in my career than have a 58% completion average and never win a championship." By 1967, the Oilers thought he was a washed-up 40-year-old, so they cut him. Ageism was real. Not to worry though, he was picked up by the Raiders in 1967. Although he played in the NFL for 26 years, won AFL MVP in 1961 and won those 2 titles, he rose to fame in 1970 when subbing in for an injured Darryl LaMonica. Up until this game, Blanda was primarily a kicker for the Raiders. He had 11 touchdowns in 3 years. On this day, however, he'd begin his infamous 5-game stretch, starting with the Steelers, where Blanda led the Raiders to a 31-14 victory, throwing 3 touchdowns, kicking a field goal, and 4 extra points. The next week, he kicked a 48-yard field goal against the Chiefs to secure a 17-17 tie with 3 seconds left. Then against the Browns, the 43-year-old took over in the 4th quarter, drove 69 yards to tie the game, and kicked a 52-yard field goal to win 23-20. The next game, he entered in the 4th quarter again. He connected with wide receiver Fred Bittikoff, leading the Raiders to a 24-19 victory. And the week after, he'd kick a 16-yard field goal with seconds left to beat the Chargers 20-17. And despite only throwing 55 passes that year, he'd earned the AFC Player of the Year. The Raiders would then face the Colts in the AFC title game. Blanda would take over for an injured LaMonica. He threw for 217 yards, 2 touchdowns, kicked a 48-yard field goal, and 2 extra points. The Raiders would lose, but at the time, he was the oldest quarterback to play in an NFL championship game, although he is now further down on that list. This stretch turned him into a bit of a legend. Sports Illustrated had Blanda on the cover with the caption, "The oldest pro strikes again." He'd also win the AP Athlete of the Year, the first football player to receive the award. Blanda played 5 more seasons, but that was mainly as a kicker. As well as his on-field dominance, he was also important behind the scenes, mentoring Kenny the Snake Stabler. Stabler would say, "We're both quarterbacks with the same philosophy about the game. He definitely grabbed me and gave me the advice I needed when I came to the Raiders." In 1975, Blanda became the first player in NFL history to pass 2,000 career points. 1976 marked the beginning of the end, when the Raiders drafted a kicker. He was kept during the preseason, and he said, "It's like waiting to be beheaded." He'd be cut before the final preseason game. His final game included a 41-yard field goal and an extra point, marking the end of his 26-year career. The Raiders actually won the Super Bowl the following season. It would have been the perfect ending, but alas. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1981 in his first year of eligibility. He'd retire with a franchise high of 863 points with the Raiders until kicker Sebastian Janikowski smashed the record. He was also the first player to ever score 500 points for 3 different teams. There have been many better quarterbacks and better kickers, but his still significant impact and longevity makes him an all-time sports legend. Alright, thanks for watching.